just joining, so I'm going to keep an eye on the attendees, just letting them in. Bear with me.
No worries.
Welcome back, Mike. Thank you for joining again. So,
thank you for having me again.
Everyone joining the webinar, thank you very much for taking this Thursday afternoon. Really appreciate you joining. Mike Whedon here, Sales Director at Formation, and my good friend and colleague, Mike Gilroy-Scott, Head of Technology. Session today is, we'll run through the agenda shortly, but as always, any questions that you have during the session, please put them into the chat window and we'll address them at the end. Equally, if anyone wants any sort of one-to-one follow-ups, have any direct questions that they don't want to post, please do come directly to the team, and we'll always look to address and pick up any questions that are raised. And also, we're always interested in feedback, new topics, anything that you guys might want to be talked about, any new information regarding teams and everything in that ecosystem. Please do ping us, because we're open to these sessions on a monthly basis and to bring in new topics. So in terms of agenda for today, we're going to be going through, say, 3.5 topics. We're going to do a quick fire update on the Microsoft Ignite event, which, albeit a couple of months ago, particularly in terms of the Microsoft Teams updates from August, some key parts there that we're going to touch upon. Then we're going to go into almost demystifying Teams phone features. There's a lot of sort of noise in the market right now about sort of Teams maturity and some of the features when you're comparing it to the main cloud providers and some of the legacy PBX functionality. That absolutely is there. It's kind of a different way of looking at it. So we're going to pick some features and just talk through and give some reassurance about the things you'd expect out of the box with Teams and how to go around when you're designing it as a phone system. We're then also going to touch upon, for any of the folks that are on the call that have any compliant requirements from a call recording perspective, finance, taking part card payments, for example. We're going to be talking about compliant recording and how to add that into your Teams voice environment. It's a topic that we get asked about all the time, so we're running through that. And then finally, we're going to touch upon InfoSec and security and how managing your Teams environment from a monitoring perspective is available. So we'll touch upon it, and we're going to be doing a dedicated session on around monitoring, but we'll touch upon that at the end of the session. So without further ado, as I said, Mike, welcome back to the session. Thanks for joining. The Microsoft Ignite event, Mike, I'm going to I think we've all seen in the news, Windows 11 Teams 2.0 has come out. So do you want to give us a quick overview on what to expect on Teams 2.0? Well, obviously, as this evolves, we hear more about it from Microsoft. We'll be doing updates, but give us a quick headline for the folks on the call that may be wondering what Teams 2.0 is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Windows 11 kind of announcement was a bit of a surprise for some people who know in the industry that Microsoft famously announced that Windows 10 was the last ever operating system they'll ever make. I'm sure a few years after that's turned out to be not true, although Windows 11 is very similar to Windows 10. With that, obviously they used it as a segue to announce Teams version 2.0, which essentially they've changed the code base that the application is written in, and with the idea to make it less resource intensive, basically make it faster. I think some of us, as the product has grown, features have increased, we've all experienced that kind of, oh, sorry, it's running a bit slow, etc. So Microsoft have acknowledged this. They're working on it, and I think 2.0 will be, a fix for a lot of people to sort of speed up the application. And in Windows 11, they've used it to showcase what it's going to look like. The fact that they're showing that it's going to be part of the operating system, it's embedded. So if you want to go out and try it, if you spin up a laptop or whatever, or a virtual environment with Windows 11, you can have a look at it. One thing I would say is that you can't test it with corporate accounts at the moment. It has to be a personal Microsoft account or Xbox account, etc., to use it. So, later on, we're going to find a little bit more about how that's going to work in the sort of corporate world.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, I mean, watch this space. It's hopefully bring some new features and functionality, and all about speeding up that experience, which is what it's all about. So, Mike, I'm going to pick some. I'm going to quick fire and put you on the spot here. There's a few. Obviously, there were lots of updates from Teams, but I guess more of the interesting ones from a usability perspective that were risen. first one I'm going to touch upon, lowering hands. Sounds simple, but it's actually quite kind of a feature that it's been overlooked a little bit, hasn't it?
It has. Obviously we're all aware of the raise hand now to sort of in, big meetings, etc., to grab attention, say you've got a question to ask, and, we've all been there where we've raised our hand, asked our question, everyone's moved on, and then everyone's kind of looking at me going, is that another hand, or have you, is it still up from before? And there was no ability for anyone to sort of to put the hands down. Thankfully, Microsoft have addressed this, and you can click a button to lower all the hands as well, particularly useful in the education sector, I'd imagine. Nice single click and lower all the hands. The only thing I would say about it is it's not available in one-to-one calls. So don't know why you'd want it, but yeah, just maybe tell them to put the hand down.
Yeah,
good feature to be able to lower all hands.
Okay, a bit more of a geeky one here, telemetry. Talk us about that one.
So this is questionable usefulness from a user perspective. I think this has really been added to maybe cover off something that maybe Zoom has had in it as a feature. But what it does is there's a little option within your meetings to say call health or call health details, and it will give you a little sidebar and it'll give you some metrics about your call. Now, the reason why I say it's limited use to users is because the metrics in there are quite techie based. They talk about packet loss, they talk about jitter, they talk about round trip, and they split it out of a video based screen sharing and audio, etc. So, but where it'd be really useful is if it's kind of a real-time diagnostics for anyone who may be interested as to what's going on with their call. And it could be useful for sort of IT departments to sort of get the user to bring that up and screenshot it so they can have a look at that kind of real-time information. The information there is not, well, I say real-time, it's about 15 seconds it refreshes. So when you turn video on and off, you have to wait a few seconds for that information to update.
Okay, good. So I think, yeah, and what we'll talk about, the InfoSec security monitoring, I think that will play a big part in terms of actually seeing what's going on in your team's environment and meetings as well. Device transfer, kind of more of a PBXy feature, but it's again a good one that's come out. Talk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, so, some of us in the kind of I mentioned an Avaya specific feature, the twinning feature, which allows you to sort of simultaneously ring on your mobile, etc. You could take a call on a desk phone and then hit a button, your mobile will ring, and then you just carry on your call on your mobile. So similar style feature with Microsoft Teams. You can be in a call, in a meeting, etc. On the desktop application. You then go, you know what, I need to get up, walk around, or actually I have to leave, get in a cab or something like that, but you want to continue the meeting. If you then open up the app on your mobile and you can see that any active meetings that you're in, you just tap the button and say, yeah, transfer it to this device, and it'll pull that meeting across to your device. So you don't have to leave it on one and then join it on another, as a seamless transition to do that.
Yeah, it's useful, isn't it? Especially at the moment when we've got delivery people knocking on the door every 5 minutes, be able to walk around your house freely. And the last one is around lock meetings. It's kind of it's a feature we've always had in conferencing in a traditional sense, but again, it's just a big addition that Microsoft have done just to make it a lot better, right?
Yeah, I think this is a very important security feature, because we've all been there where we sent out a meeting invite, someone's grabbed the link, forwarded it on to someone else, and you don't usually have particular control over that. So if you start a meeting and you count up all the participants, you go, yeah, I've got everyone here, and I don't actually want anyone else to join after that particular time, then you can go into there and lock the meeting. And what that does is, even with people with the link, they are not able to join into that meeting, and it's locked for just the participants that are in there.
Good. Yeah. So yeah, nice addition. So yeah, Mike, what's the website? Is it Tom's Talk for any folks that want sort of updates on Ignite and all that sort of stuff? What's a really useful website if folks don't know about it? Is it Tom's Talk?
Yeah, Tom Arbuthnot, who's a Microsoft MVP, very well known in the industry. So just giving him a shout out. He's got some very in-depth blogs, and he's very much finger on the pulse with a lot of everything Microsoft. So seek him out on his blog website, on LinkedIn, etc. And yeah, he's a good source of information.
Cool. Maybe it's at the end, Mike, if you can paste his web link. He's great, isn't it? Right, and he'll give you a lot of those updates from that perspective. Okay, so that was Ignite. Now, more importantly, going on to the Teams phone features. Obviously, we're big advocates of Teams voice. And as I said at the beginning, it's all about demystifying some of the maturity around Teams. And actually, to be fair, Microsoft have brought some really cool features that in old traditional PBX world would have cost you an arm and a leg to get sorted. So I'm going to rattle through the top 6 that we've come to. Mike, obviously there's a whole bunch, but I guess this is off the back of obviously when we've deployed Teams voice for other customers, been really useful features and things that they've asked about and make sure they want reassurance ultimately on it. Talk us through the first one, Mike. There's a view on call queues, hunt groups, different ring types. You can of course do that in Teams, but just clarify that a little bit more and the complexity you can build into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think quite a few people are now aware you can bring voice calls into Teams. I'm not talking your sort of Teams to Teams one-to-one calls. This is PSTN calls, from a phone number coming into your Teams client. But you still get PBX-like functionality such as call queues, and you can define if you want to ring a group or a hunt group, or as it's more commonly known in the PBX world, you can set 4 different types of ring groups. So you have attendant routing, which sometimes also known as collective, which basically rings everyone together. You've got the sort of round robin where it starts at the first disposition and then that's sequential and it starts in the first position and works its way through. Then you've got the round robin where it rings the first, the second and the third, and then the next call rings on the 4th, 5th and 6th, etc. And then you've got the longest idle one, which will pick up the person who's been on the phone the least or the longest time idle.
Okay.
So those standard, that's pretty standard across phone systems, etc. But Teams absolutely has got all of those features.
Yeah, and it's reassuring because I guess when people are looking to move to Teams, they go, "Oh, we're going to lose out on some key features where we've got hunt groups." You can absolutely do it, and you're going to continue with that probably same experience that you have today. Is the key take.
Absolutely.
You mentioned it there a little bit. Next point around auto attendance. You hear, people say, "Oh, there's not auto attendance. It's one layer. You can't do multi-layer." It's not true, right? You can do some really sexy stuff with auto attendance. And the second point of that question is around the ability not just to press 1, 2, press 3. You can actually use voice to drive it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Auto attendance is a thing. Some of us know them as IVRs, and essentially it's a way of directing a call without a receptionist having to do that for you. So you call in and you're presented with some options, with a voice prompt. So you can do the standard one, press 1 for this, 2 for that, etc. You've already mentioned that instead of pressing the numbers, you can actually use your voice to transfer a call, not just saying the number, but actually saying either the name of the queue you want to be transferred to, whether it be sales or marketing or whatever you want trying to get through, or accounts. But you can also use it to transfer to users as well. So if you wanted to say the name of the person you want to be transferred to, you can do that. It's not just the voice recognition. You can multi-layer these auto attendants. You just string them all together, so you can create complex routing. Obviously, don't string too many together because you don't want people sitting in an auto attendant forever before they're getting answered. But some other nice things on the auto attendant, you can set time of day routing. So you can basically have different auto attendants based on what time of day that they're calling, and you can pre-program holiday time. So you can populate your bank holidays, your Christmas holidays, coronations into your programming, and it's all available there in Teams.
So a traditional function, but it's absolutely in Teams. So that's definitely nip that one in the bud. Something I really find useful, and again, it's kind of a new technology that a lot of the cloud providers are doing from a voice perspective, but voicemail transcription, it's like awesome, right? You don't have to sit there listening to voice.
Enabled out the box, ready to go. The transcribing of your voicemails as they come in. So traditionally with voicemails, you dial into your mailbox, listen to the recording, go through the preamble. It was recorded to this time, whatever. It's there. It's transcribed. You can just click into your voicemail section and quickly read what it is. It's about 99% accurate.
Yeah.
But you can get the gist if there are errors. But voice recognition is slightly imperfect, but also so are some people's accents. So yeah, it's pretty good and it's great. I mean, I can't remember the last time I actually listened to one of the voicemails. I usually just read the transcript. It's a great feature, and it's available on desktop and mobile as well.
That's when you're on the go and actually dedicate time to it. Okay, good. This is one actually we get asked about a lot, and there's two ways of skinning this cat, I guess. My call reporting and sort of accounting. There's the out of the box team service, but there is also additional modules you can add on. Just give us the nuance of both of those, and I guess alleviate the fact you can absolutely get a call reporter in the traditional sense that talks about everything from Teams and calls in.
Anyone moving from a traditional phone system, would be used to the fact that they get some sort of reporting package, not necessarily included with them, but add-ons that you can do that. Absolutely, you can do the same with Microsoft Teams, and traditionally, Teams has the ability to you can go in and search people's calls and their call history. It's all there. You can export it to CSV, you can manipulate it, etc. But quite often, complex call scenarios. Calls, gets answered by one person, transferred to another, put on hold, all that kind of stuff, all that call handling gets lost in that kind of information. Now, with a proper reporting package, you can actually tap all that information out of the Graph API and present it into user readable graphics or reports to actually, do some decent reporting, because people are, interested in how long it takes for people to answer calls on average in a particular department, or how many outbound calls do they make, what's their average talk time, all that sort of information that dedicated packages can provide. Absolutely, you can bring those into Teams as well, so you won't have to lose that kind of functionality when you move to Teams. You just need to have the right software packages included.
Cool. So they're simple bolt-ons, and I think one of the things we've again been asked about is sort of this idea of informal contact center, being able to see agents that are busy, agents that are not busy, which queues they're available, who's available, all that sort of stuff in real-time wallboards you can absolutely get. So if you're not a full-blown contact center but do want, I don't know, maybe you run a service team or a group of people that are working remotely, you can absolutely see when they're available and how your IVRs and your SLAs are sitting. So again, big tick, and you can absolutely do it. The final two, Mike, I guess this is the idea of when you bring Teams voice into Teams, that single application experience, and why that's key when you think about presence. It's been the long age issue of, if via Mitel, Cisco, even RingCentral and 8x8 now, they have their own separate soft phone on the desktop, but it never really integrates the presence. Whereas if you have Teams voice in Teams, you are absolutely getting the true presence of that individual, right? Why is that
completely important? Yeah, the single sort of platform, it's when you bring voice into Teams, it sort of, I always say, stops becoming a phone system, because it's basically you're bringing calls into a collaboration platform, and it's the configuration of Teams is very user centric, so the user will control when and how they take communications. So the user can control whether they go into do not disturb, they can control when they're available, but likewise that presence is automatically updated by your calendar within your Outlook or whatever email client you're using. So for example, if you're in a meeting, it will show you as busy in Teams. That doesn't mean you can't receive calls, but that presence is pervasive across your account, so you have a single source of truth for that presence. And you can even use, if you wanted to, it's a bit crazy, but you can use that presence to make decisions of whether to route calls to people or not. Likewise, that you have the oh no, that's the next point. I'm not going to run into that one, so maybe ask the next one and I can continue.
Yeah, well, you think there was and it kind of hand in hand is ability for users to manage call queues, because that was another thing. Is like if I'm suddenly part of lots of hunt groups in the traditional sense, individuals of course can control that sort of stuff, bring themselves in and out of queue if they go over lunch and all that sort of stuff, right?
That's right. So you the ability for a user to, I mean, a lot of this might sound to an admin, they'd probably hate all of this stuff, but the good news is you can disable it. So in as an admin, so you can enable users to come in and out of ring groups at their discretion, whether because there's a high volume of calls and you're just asking people to come in to help answer those calls, they can just toggle the hunt group on, or like Mike says, this is like, I'm on a break, I'm just going to toggle off so my Teams isn't ringing while I'm away. Obviously, likewise, you can do not disturb, but again, you can override the do not disturb with the call queue or auto attendant settings.
Okay, cool. So people on the bridge, I know there's Kevin, I know you've sent a couple of notes, and Greg as well. We will address those questions at the end. I mean, So we look here, when will the device transfer feature be available? It's already available, right, Mike?
It is already available, but obviously these features are being pushed out right now, so they may not automatically appear on your tenant. Certainly if you're running the preview in Teams, it's definitely available now. In fact, I used it yesterday, I think. So yeah, it'll be available soon for you.
Okay. And the next one there, any news on transferring calls from call queues to external contacts? Cannot reference a name, PSTN Teams speed dial if not searchable on Teams.
Is this an external divert that you're? Sorry, Kevin. I don't know if it's you're referencing a divert. So a call comes in, but you want to transfer it to, let's say, a call
Mobile.
answering service or to a mobile. I don't know whether you can just chat in the message.
Yeah, if you could elaborate a little bit more, Kevin, we can address
Yeah,
that.
we'll try and answer that one. Yeah.
And just the second part of that question, sorry, an external number, yeah. So
yeah, so you can do it. I think the important thing with if you're transferring out, and I'm assuming you're using direct routing. If you are, it's important to make sure that the resource account for that, thank you, that resource account for the number that you've got there must have a voice routing policy in order to transfer externally. Hopefully that's answered your question. So just make sure the resource count has a voice routing policy for external diverts. Okay.
Yeah. So Kevin, if you want to reach out or drop us your details offline, we can absolutely pick up and talk that through. No problem at all. No problem. Okay. So that was the phone system features in Teams, Mike. Next one, next part of the session for the next sort of 10 minutes, compliant call recording. Big ask. We've got a lot of customers in obviously compliance. So when you're talking finance, legal, maybe they're taking card payments on a sort of low volume, you need to be able to pause and resume. So the call recording from quite a rudimentary perspective. Let's talk about some of the key elements. And I think the thing to consider first and foremost is when you introduce PSTN calling, Teams phone user, the native call recording that or Teams recording that we expect in video gets taken away. Just want to elaborate on that just to make it clear on where this comes in.
Yeah, this is a small misconception. It's easy to kind of miss, is that when you bring in voice calling into Teams, the recording function is not available for a PSTN connected call. So if I just rang Mike on Teams one-to-one call, I could just go on, you know what, I need to record this call, go into the menu, record, and it's recording. Now, when if I ring Mike from my mobile into his Teams, that option is not there. Okay, so Microsoft does not provide recording capabilities at the point you bring in PSTN calling into Teams out the box. Yeah. So what it does have is certified call recording providers that have been rubber stamped by their process to say, yes, this recording platform works with Microsoft Teams. So yeah, you can absolutely bring it in.
Okay. And when we talk about compliance, so the recorder we use, for example, has encrypted call recordings. You can set the storage policies on it. Obviously finance, FCA, some people have to keep them for 7 years, for example. All of that absolutely still available. Set all those policies, you're not losing anything from a traditional recorder. Is that a fair comment, Mike?
Yeah, and actually you are gaining some things because, coming back to the fact you're coming into a collaboration platform rather than just a voice platform, you can record additional modalities. So you can record the video, you can record the video-based screen sharing. So, you're getting 3 different types of media that you can actually record in there, making the whole experience a lot richer. Obviously, storage increases significantly once you include video. But yeah, absolutely. If that's important, you can record meetings, you can record calls, all sorts of things. You're not restricted to just voice calls. You can actually record per user, per group, per type of call, etc. And some of them are working on advanced filters so that you can specify policies such as I don't want a meeting recorded. So based on the meeting title, if I put no record in the title of the meeting, then actually that won't record. So you can do some clever stuff with that.
Yeah, it's really cool, isn't it? And we're seeing more and more. You might start a phone call with a client, say in the finance sector, and you might escalate that to a video call where you might be discussing some compliant things. So the fact of the matter is, as you said, all those different digital channels can be recorded, and then they're secured in a portal where you can set the access rights, which is obviously important from a compliance perspective. In terms of taking that step further, then accessing the call recordings, absolutely, you can still do things like taking parts of the call recording, tagging notes. You can download it, send expiration links, things like that. Talk a bit more about that from a sharing perspective and a QM quality.
Yeah,
management.
I mean, particularly the call recording platform that we use. It's by a company called Mnemonics, and it's their IX cloud platform. It's built in Azure, and it's built on microservices in a serverless kind of way, and it's auto scales, etc. It's completely multi-tenanted. It's all authenticated using a single sign-on with your Microsoft account for when you're accessing it, and it's got granular controls over who can listen to what, which I think it's its primary feature in there. So when you're listening to calls, you're able to share that call with people. And the traditional way some people have shared call recordings has been, download it, email a copy of it. With this platform, you don't need to do that. What you can do is you can create a shareable link to that recording. They don't have to have an account with this Mnemonics. That link will be available to anyone with that link, and you can specify expiry times on that recording as well. So if you say, I only want this recording to be available on this link for 1 hour, bang, you set it for 1 hour, you send it to someone, they'll be able to listen to it for 1 hour, and after that hour's expired, that link will not work anymore.
Yeah. Okay. So really important especially if you're doing back and forth with a customer, for example.
Yeah.
Final couple of pieces here in terms of just taking the recording element a little bit further in terms of quality management. So scorecards, making notes against call recordings. So it's quite important if you've got a team, for example, that you're running and you want to look at how they're getting on, you want to do some training, coaching, being able to score the recordings and share about the agent. That's kind of going into a bit more of a contact centers phase, but again, you can start doing that and collaborating with the team and making sure you're
absolutely
standard of the call recordings, right?
I mean, it could be simple, just a training exercise. You've got some new hires, etc. You want to make sure that they're answering the phone correctly. Are they saying hi, they're mentioning the company name, or is there a particular product or a promotion that you're running? You want to make sure that they're saying it. So you want a quick and easy way that someone who's monitoring those calls can actually just check off those values, and you can create those custom scorecards to when those calls are being evaluated, to quickly check that they're reaching the desired goals.
Yeah, good. Okay. And the final one we mentioned at the beginning around taking card payments. So of course, there's a number of different ways from a compliance perspective around manual pause and resume, auto pause and resume. You can send it off to IVRs, etc. But for the nature of a call recorder, just to be clear out of the box, 2 options: manual pause and resume. So the person, the agent, if you want to call them that, can manually pause and resume. But talk to us also about the auto pause and resume that you can build in, so via a URL web trigger, for example.
Yeah, and you've pretty much nailed it there, Mike. If you have a payment portal, you can use that URL scanning to sort of say, if this URL is opened at that point, signal the recorder to say stop the recording at this point, and then resume at a later date as you navigate away.
Yeah. So if any of the on the bridge, if you are doing any sort of, I wouldn't use this in vain in terms of a full-blown card payment service, but if you're doing it on ad hoc, absolutely you can still manage those pause and resumes. And again, it's encrypted, it's stored securely. So it's a key part. We get asked about it all the time, but it's an additional module you can add on, and you can bring compliant call recording into Teams. As the big tick there. I think just a question come in from Christina. Kevin, thank you for answering it. I think again, the additional bolt-on software as well. Mike, in terms of the real time, we were looking at this earlier the week. You can again visually see agents available, who's on calls, who's not on calls. So
yeah, it's a presence dashboard, but as part of the I mentioned the Graph API earlier, and basically the application makes calls, and it's a read-only system, so you can't actually make any changes to presence, but it can read presence of users, so you can create dashlets or dashboards based on departments or particular users, so you can actually see. I would say near real time, because there is a delay in the response back. So within about 10 to 15 seconds, the presence will have updated. So you can see at a glance on one of these dashlets who's available in your team or department. Yeah,
I think the key thing that we mentioned on the last call, Mike, around the presence API that Microsoft are planning to release, it's the biggest bugbear of contact centers of other people can't override presence at the moment. So if I was a team leader and I saw someone was out of office or put themselves on do not disturb, the only way an individual can come off that is by pinging them a note and saying, please come off do not disturb. You can't override it centrally. So as soon as Teams and Microsoft enable that feature, it's going to be a game changer in terms of controlling presence and your agents, if you call them that. So that's really going to open the doors, and that'll be a big addition when Microsoft do address that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Attendant API, which is due, I think, Q3 this year. Microsoft going to bring it out. It's in beta at the moment, but a lot of companies who make attendant consoles or operator consoles, they can't wait for this to come out, because there's a lot of things that they can't currently do with their operator console that you would traditionally say, surely you should be able to do that. You know, things like consult transfer and stuff like that. The API will open up all of those kind of features as well. Yeah.
Okay, good. So yeah, watch this space for that. Zoe, thank you. I've seen a question from Zoe there. We currently flag calls for agents to listen to, for example, best practice calls. Can you do that in the recording platform?
Yeah, I think we can write. You can write notes against the call recordings, and I'm pretty sure you can search the notes as well. So if you have a particular tag, we'll double check that for you, but I'm pretty sure that's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could give examples. Good call recording. Use this as an example, for example. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that helps. So I guess it's not a full-blown QM call recorder in the sense of that perspective, but it does have some features you could get there without having to blow the bank on, say, a variant equivalent, something to that effect. Okay, so Mike, that covered the compliant call recording. And again, if anyone has any more questions on that, if it's sort of viable for your business, we'd love to talk to you. We can demo all the elements we talked to, and we'll probably look to touch upon that in future sessions as well. Now, the final part of the call for the last 5 minutes, we're not going to go into too much detail, but it's something that we're seeing a lot more, Mike, around, sounds boring, but InfoSec and security. But more importantly, how are IT teams able now with the tools, and we can talk briefly around the Teams analytics platform that we use, giving IT teams the ability to see what is going on, not just from a team's voice, but across your team's environment. Some really key parts here around InfoSec, and we will demo this and go on to a dedicated session in probably our next session on this. But I guess give a teaser, Mike, for the folks on the line around really where this is taking it. It's pretty sexy stuff.
Yeah, I think Teams, as it gets used and used more and more, multiple teams, multiple channels, guest access as well. It becomes very difficult to sort of manage the governance and security of your teams, unless you've got some pretty strict policies about who can create teams. Can you create teams with more than one owner, or less than one owner, I should say, or one or less? And what happens to those guest accounts that are sitting in those teams? What files are in those teams that those guests can access? So do you know who's accessing those files? So it's important that you can have a tool that will literally show you all of these things that are going on in your team's tenant that you may not know. So for example, I gave a few examples, as I was just saying there. How many teams have you got with only one owner? Like, what happens when the owner of that team leaves? You're going to have to put a call into IT and get them to escalate someone else in that team up to be an owner. How many teams have you got with guests in it? How many files do you have in each one of those teams and channels? What kind of files are they? So we're working really hard to come up with some really compelling analytics on how your team's tenant has been deployed and how it's being used. Some of the nicer features that we've got in there are ability to see how your organization is interacting with each other, which departments are talking to which department. In our particular case, it turns out that no one talks to sales, do they, Mike? Yeah, we're a very operations driven organization, so it's actually quite eye-opening. So what you can actually discover if you've got the right information and you can present it in the right way, some really compelling things we can see from your team's deployment.
Okay, and just one of the things I know you preach to us on a daily basis, Mike, the 5 stars at the end of a call. Sometimes you click it, sometimes you don't even know if it's going to the abyss. Talk to us a little bit about that and how that's important from an IT.
I mean, I'd straw poll. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on the chat and say, oh, I never click that, or I always click it. the good thing to know is actually that doesn't disappear into the abyss at Microsoft. It's actually logged and it's accessible by the Graph API. So you can actually pull off metrics to which people actually are actually feeding back, what their experience is like. So you can actually find out that someone's having a bad time with their teams and they're having a poor experience, and then you can try and address that. So you can report on that information. So my advice would be to your organizations, go back and say, can you please make sure you click that button, because it's actually a really, really useful metric to, anecdotal user experience.
Yeah, because I think there's definitely a view that, like you said, it just goes off to the abyss. You have it on WhatsApp and all these different apps. You just think, I was going to the corporation, they're tracking me. I don't even know what they're going to do with it. But
no, it's all there. It's all accessible.
Do it, your own IT teams can actually look at the results and feedback and do something about it.
The reason why it's important is because we can take that feedback, we can take the meeting or call ID of that call, and we can bring up metrics as to what was going on. So we can say, oh, it was a bad call, but we can see it was the user was on a mobile device, they weren't on Wi-Fi, so they were on this XYZ carrier that they were on their mobile network. So actually, we don't think that's an issue that we need to worry about. Or likewise, we can say, okay, they were on their laptop at home on the Wi-Fi, but they weren't using their headset. They were just using the built-in devices. So we can actually correlate all that information and come up with some very decent analytics on that.
Cool. Okay. Well, look, as I said, we'll go into it. Mike, I know you've been doing a lot of work in terms of the dashboarding. There's the whole balance sheet of teams that's floating around. It's about putting it in the right context and making it readable and actionable data. So I know you and the team have been doing a lot around that. Rue there said, is that a standard feature in the team's analytics? So I know you get a lot of stuff out and you can put it into Power BI. Talk a little bit just to answer Rue's question there.
Yeah. So on this, all the data is available on the Graph API. So the magic comes where you're able to take that out, put that information to a database, and then build the Power BI reports to do that. If you don't fancy doing any of that, we've kind of got a package that we can deliver as part of any team solution we put in for you that will deliver that for you. So you won't even have to lift a finger. We can just literally switch it on in your tenant.
Good. Hopefully that answers your question there, Rue. So look, brings us to the end of the session. Thank you very much for everyone joining. As always, as I say, we do these on a monthly basis. If anyone wants to stay on online, we'll keep the bridge open for the next 5-10 minutes to address any further questions. I know, Kevin, if you wanted to take this offline with a couple of your questions, more than happy to field that. Please watch out for the next event. We really appreciate you taking your time out of the day on a Thursday to join us, and hope you all have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you on the next session, hopefully. Thank you very much. See you soon.